Hey everyone, this is Scott from Forgot to Grow Up. Welcome to our Dracula Season 1 Episode 3 Thoughts video. Just finished watching the final episode of the first season of Dracula on Netflix, and I'm just going to be sharing my general thoughts. I am going to be getting into spoilers for the whole season, in particularly this last episode of this season. There was only 3 episodes in the season, but they were longer ones. But anyways, that's not the point. This episode we see Dracula in our modern day. We ended off last one. He fell into the ocean in a box, and then he woke up seemingly after a very long nap, or as they put in this episode, a restorative coma he put himself into. And so, yeah, he's in the modern day, and we just get to see how that kind of works out. We see it doesn't take him long to learn things, because obviously we learned in the last few episodes that he learns things he can learn skills and memories and stuff by consuming somebody's blood. So he just, takes on a couple snacks, and he's up to date on the 100 years the 100+ years he had missed while he was in his little nap going on. So this is really interesting. We see a Van Helsing, a modern Van Helsing, a doctor, Zoe Van Helsing in this one, descendant of Van Helsing we met in the other one on her father's side, etc., etc. But yeah, so that was really interesting to kind of see this, him in the modern day, and see that because of some of his actions in the past, the fact that he had left the one character, what's her name? Oh, I forgot her name now, but Jonathan Hacking. We see that his fiancée, who we did know survived in the first episode, she went on to create a foundation, which now Van Helsing is working. This modern day Van Helsing is working for. So I really like that is kind of this whole kind of round circle thing. The events of that transpired in the first few episodes and connecting to 100 and some odd years later. And I also like that this foundation there, all kind of like, yeah, we were preparing for it, but we never actually thought he was going to show up. So I kind of like that they're all kind of caught off guard and kind of seeing this. I also like that Dracula had a backup plan. Apparently, he had a lawyer set up from actually we meet in the first one. The reason we meet Jonathan Hacking, and so and so that was really just kind of fun that he still had a tie to the lawyers, and he was able to get a lawyer to get him out, being held against his will by this foundation that's being run by Dr. Helsing. And so this was just a really fun episode for me. Obviously, big kind of diversion or different thing from the original source material, because obviously that never took place in our modern day, because it was taking place in his modern day at the time. That being said, it was still kind of a fun new kind of take on it. Seeing Dracula in the modern day, seeing what he would be up to. We see that his lawyer ends up being like his henchman, and hints at the fact that Dracula has plans for world domination, which I'm like, oh snap, that's something I would really like to get into. Is that why this is only the first season of multiples? Maybe we're gonna get Dracula trying to take over the world. But that's before the end of the episode kind of gets squashed in my mind. Maybe it's hard to say. Yes and no. But that being said, some of the other things I liked besides just the foundation and stuff is we learned a few little more things. We see at one point that Dracula does have a reflection. It's not that he doesn't have a reflection. He just doesn't like looking at his reflection because it's an old version of him, which I'm imagining it's showing his true self, his true age, or the true kind of toll of the years have taken on his soul in a sense. So that was kind of a fun little thing to see that. We also see he tries to drink Dr. Van Helsing, Zoe Van Helsing's blood, but gets sick and starts throwing up because of it, which I liked as a little other little thing that they threw into this. And it turns out that's because she has cancer, and cancer is poisonous to vampires, which I always like that little bit of a fun thing with vampire lore when they throw in blood diseases and stuff like that, just to make it a little more complicated. They get sick when they consume certain things, and they're looking out for not consuming something that maybe has cancer that would kill them. So I think that's just a little fun way of building on the lore a little bit. Speaking of the lore, we get a few more little things. We get the Count trying to making himself a bride in the modern day via this Lucy girl who just a party girl and doesn't care about anything, and as we learn by the end, doesn't fear death, but does. And so that was just an interesting kind of thing to see that in this last episode we spent a lot of time with him making another bride, and I thought that was going to go further, but she didn't listen to his advice and didn't check the thing to say don't cremate me, and yeah, so she came back in the inside the incinerator, and that I did see that coming when he told her not to not to be cremated, and teaches her about the different things, and that kind of set it up a little bit, but it was still kind of a fun way to do it, and it made sense too, kind of tying into why this bride wasn't going to end up being able to stick around. So yeah, another couple of fun things I liked from this episode. We see Dr. Helsing ends up drinking Dracula's blood at one point, and she's able to get some of the memory, or be able to get some of the memories and make a connection with Agatha Van Helsing, the nun we had met in the first couple episodes. So that was a fun little tie, and then we see at one point that they're even talking to each other in a sense inside her head, and so that was just a little bit of a fun little thing, and then they kind of work together in a sense to go take on Van Helsing, or not Van Helsing, to take on Dracula and solve his, the mystery that ends up being that he's just scared of death. And I was like, wait, that's supposed to be his big secret? That's something you couldn't figure out? His whole thing is that he's the undead. I always figured the reason how he became undead was because he didn't want to die. I always figured that was just kind of part of it, you know what I mean? But so that was a little bit like, to me, it was a little bit like, wait, lady, it took you this long to figure out that he was scared to die? Wait, he didn't know that he was scared to die? What? That part was to be a little like, wait, oh, okay. I knew that. That was just me, though. Speaking of how this episode or / season kind of ends off, we end up learning that the sun doesn't actually affect him as part of this he's scared of death thing, and that was kind of like one of those myths that kind of or folklore that developed into a myth and a legend that he ended up believing himself, which that I thought was fun. He's old enough at this point, he keeps consuming different people's blood. It kind of was what his own explanation for his fear of the cross was, but it kind of applies to it being kind of all in his head, this kind of manifestation, which makes me kind of curious about more of the stuff and why something like, well, now that I think of it, I guess we didn't see any other zombies get affected by the sun that I can think of, not zombies, undead, or vampires affected by the sun that I can think of off the top of my head. Was the first bride killed by the sun? I can't remember now. Oh no, he staked her. That's not important. The point is we did learn that, so it was kind of interesting to see. That was just kind of a fun little take on him and his abilities, and what made him a little extra special. It was more that but that's the other thing, we didn't learn actually why he was special, because there was other ones that this is the thing, we didn't get enough other vampires or enough people trying to kill the other vampires except for staking them to really know what affected them, and which was this kind of the made up stuff that he kind of helped because he believed it himself. Anyways, that was still just an interesting point, I thought. But then we get the way this episode ends off, which is after they both come to this realization that he's just scared of death. He ends up drinking Zoe's blood because she had left the hospital where there was a time jump at one point in this episode, and so she had left the hospital. So she, I guess, is on her last few kicks at this point because of the cancer, and Dracula kind of, I guess, realizing that he's always been scared to death, finally accepts that he doesn't have to be, and so he drinks her cancer blood and helps her, have a not painful death. And he thus seemingly dies at the end of this episode, and I guess that's the whole series. And that to me was a little bit like, oh, okay, I was prepared for this. This is a BBC combo show, or meaning they BBC and Netflix teamed up on this one. I think maybe even BBC made it and Netflix just maybe bought the international rights for it. That being said, I was prepared for this to just be kind of a one-run series, and it seems that way. Obviously, we're dealing with a lore and a mythos that they can play with it as much as they want. They've already changed stuff, so they can easily, say that he didn't actually die. He somehow was able to recover from the cancer blood, but for now it seems that they did end it in a way that he's, has died, and that we got the whole story of Dracula, or this new telling of Dracula, which I was pretty happy with. I thought it's pretty good. I would have liked, like I said, to see more, see if him trying to take over the world and stuff like that, but then that's just me, though. I thought it was fun. I really liked this actor who played Dracula. I felt he had that right charisma of just that balance of evil but charming, and just kind of having fun with what he was doing. Like the whole time he seems like this crazy guy. Well, not crazy, but a little unhinged, because he's so happy about all these things that makes him a little bit more menacing. So I really enjoyed him as Dracula, and I would be okay with seeing more seasons. But if we don't get more seasons, I thought this was also a good conclusion and a kind of complete story of this Dracula character, or this Dracula adaptation. But yeah, that's all my thoughts on the Netflix Dracula series, the BBC Dracula series. Be sure to let me know in the comments below what you thought of the Dracula series. Did you like it? Did you not? Do you want more would you like to see more seasons of it, or would you like to see another one of the classic monsters adapted in this similar way? I know I would definitely be on board for that. But yes, that's all my thoughts. Thanks again for joining me today. Sure to subscribe to the channel if you aren't already, and have a good one.